Mirror's Edge was developed by DICE and published by EA in 2008. You control Faith Connors, a runner that acts as a courier for the city's underbelly. You see, the city, which is just called the city, used to be like any other city, until a dystopic government crackdown. Now it's a shining example of bureaucratic overreach and state surveillance. The game starts with Faith on a routine mission delivering a package for a client. Everything is going according to plan until she runs into her sister Kate, who's being framed for murder. The rest of the game is Faith trying to unravel the mystery of who is framing Kate and why. The cyberpunk themes in Mirror's Edge are more subtle than the last couple of games that I've reviewed. No cybernetics, no hacking, no corporate espionage. In fact, there's no low life to be found. The city is a lot like future Los Angeles in Demolition Man, except the cops have a lot more trouble enhancing their calm and get a lot more shooty when they see someone who isn't doing what they're told.
Hey, drop your bag and put your hands so we can see them.
Just get the hell out of there. Wires are going crazy. Get out of there, mate. I'm patching Celeste in. You there, Sal?
What the hell's happening? I can hear gunshots and that bird seems a little too curious.
Faith's on her way. Get your ass ready to move.
And sure, living under the boot of a police force so militarized that they've literally hired private military forces to crack down on the citizenry is a bummer, but the city looks great. In fact, the art design is so good this Xbox 360 game still holds up in the era of the PlayStation 5. The bright sun and the primary colors give this game a look that hasn't really been replicated. Mirror's Edge may look like a first-person shooter, but it doesn't control like one. The layout of the controls reminds me a lot of a Soulsborne game. And no, I'm not saying this is the Dark Souls of first-person platformers, but the most used controls are mapped to the bumpers and triggers. It's an interesting setup that takes a little getting used to. Basically, movement is contextual. Any upward movement is mapped to the left bumper, and any downward movement is mapped to the left trigger. If you want to vault over a pole, you hit the left bumper. If you want to get past the same waist-high pole, but maintain your momentum, you'd hit the left trigger and slide under the pole. There are a great deal of jumps in the game that won't kill you, but will hurt you when you land and stun Faith, leaving her open to attack. If you hit the left trigger right before you land, Faith will collapse into a forward roll. You won't be hurt, and you'll maintain your speed, which, in the later levels, will make the difference between beating a level and restarting at the last checkpoint. Another thing Mirror's Edge does that takes a little getting used to is how Faith controls based on where she happens to be looking. For example, when you're trying to transition from a pipe to a platform, where you are looking dictates how you jump off the pipe. So if you aren't looking high enough, Faith will simply drop instead of jumping and reaching out for the ledge. This is poorly implemented, as even after you get used to the mechanic, it can still feel a bit inconsistent. The game can be divided up into 3 parts. There's the chase sequence, the slower traversal areas, and the fight sequences. The chase sequences involve Faith being pursued by police. There's no combat allowed here. If you try to stop and fight, you'll die, but the game does a pretty good job of letting you know when you just need to bust a move, as Merc, your guy in the chair, will outright tell you to not stop and to keep running. In the slower traversal areas, there's no real enemy presence. It's basically just a big jumping puzzle. You just have to make your way from A to B without dying. This usually takes place in a big vertical space, and you just have to figure out how to get all the way up or all the way down without falling too far. The fight sequences are just you being dropped into an arena with a bunch of enemies, and you can't leave until they're dead or unconscious. Faith doesn't carry any weapons, but she can punch and kick. If you close the gap with one of the enemies, you can perform a disarm. This will knock out the enemy, equip Faith with a firearm, and is the easiest way to deal with opposition. You can use firearms to fight back, but you'll give up the pacifist achievement, and a no-gun run makes more sense thematically. It's difficult to clear someone of murder if you spend the whole game shooting people. There's a similar choice to be made when it comes to traversal. By default, the game will highlight the best path to run automatically. Dubbed Runner Vision, it colors objects in the environment bright red, making it easy for new players to see the way forward when they're getting swarmed by police and being yelled at by Merc. It's a really slick way of guiding the player without breaking immersion. My preferred method of play used to be the no runner vision pacifist run, but I used to have a lot more time and patience. Now that I have a full-time job and 2 kids, ain't nobody got time for that. It's to the game's credit that it has such an organic way to select a difficulty. It makes the player feel as empowered as they choose. Mirror's Edge is such an ambitious title. There are a few things it tried that don't really work, but it shouldn't dissuade you from picking it up. I think it's a must-play from the 7th generation consoles, and certainly for a fan of Cyberpunk.